We already know that a circle equation has the formula x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals to r squared. And we've spoken about this in quite length and detail in previous lessons. Now in this lesson, I'm going to show you if they give you a circle and they give you the end points, the diameter endpoints. Now remember, the diameter goes through the circle center, okay? Now if they give you the end points, which are those 2 points over there, that's why we call it the end points, then from that we will be able to come up with the equation of the circle, and that is what this lesson will be about. So here they give us a circle that has, now you can go plot this if you want. Let's do that. It's not necessary, but maybe it's just nice for some of you to be able to see it. So it would be, the point would be 2 and negative 4, which would be over here, 2 and negative 4, and then negative 2 and 6, which would be somewhere over here, for example, and negative 2 and 6. So that is the diameter of the circle, okay? So the circle would probably look something like that. Something like that, okay? It doesn't really matter. I mean, that part does look a little bit big. So that's probably what the circle would look like. So we know that the circle equation goes like this. So we need to somehow find the center, because that is the center. The h and the k is the center. Now the center would be somewhere over here. So what we will do is we'll need to use the midpoint formula. So I'm not sure if you know about the midpoint formula, but if you look at the minus 2 and you look at the positive 2, you need to find the x value that is exactly halfway between those two. So some of you are quite good at doing this manually, but the formula to find the x value midpoint, or the midpoint of any two numbers, is to plus them and then divide by 2. So that's going to be minus 2 plus 2 divided by 2, which is 0. So the center would have an x value of 0. And so we could say that h will be 0. Then we'll do the same with the y values. So we'll just add them together and then divide by 2. So that'll be 6 plus negative 4, because I take that x value, I mean that y value and that y value. And I just want to know what number is exactly halfway between them. So 6 plus negative 4 becomes 6 minus 4, which is 2, over 2, which is 1. So that means k would be 1. So the equation would be x minus 0 plus y minus 1 equals to the radius. Now we still don't know what the radius is. So to find the radius, you have two options. You could calculate the distance from this point to this point and then divide by 2, or because we already know this length over here, or we know that this coordinate is 0 and 1, you could calculate this length over here and then you don't need to divide by 2. It doesn't matter what you want to do. I think the easiest is probably just to use the two endpoints, but it doesn't really matter. So remember, to calculate the distance between 2 points, we use this formula. Okay. And so I'm going to use it between this point and this point. So I'm going to use this as my point number 2, and this is my point number 1. So we just go fill in the formula. And so we take the x value of point number 2 minus the x value of point number 1, which is a 2. Then we take the y value of point number 2, which is a 6, and then the y value of point number 1, which is negative 4. Then we go ahead, type that all in on the calculator. And that's going to give you 2 square root 29. I wouldn't say use decimals, rather leave it like that. So that's the diameter. So the radius would be half of that. So divide that by 2 and you would end up with square root 29. Now, to make the circle equation, we need r squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to square that. So you're going to square that over there, and that's going to give you 29. So then we can go fill this in over here as 29. Okay, now x minus 0, that's just x. And so that is our final answer for this one. Okay, so here's our last example. So this one, I'm not going to go draw it accurately. I'm just going to make a little diameter. And I think it's a good idea to do this just to sort of help you remember what steps you're busy doing. So there's the one part and there's the other part. Yes, I know it's not according to scale, but it's just a little diagram. So we need to go find the circle center. To find the circle center, we need to know the midpoint of all of these values. So let's start with the x values. So to find the midpoint of any two numbers, you add them together and then you divide by 2. So that would be like minus 6 plus negative 4, because that's the first one and that's the second one, divided by 2, and that's going to give you negative 5. We do the same with the y values, and so that's going to be 8 plus 2 divided by 2, and that would give us 5. So we now know that the circle center is at negative 5 and 5. So that would be your h, that would be your k. And so in the basic formula of a circle, we can then go fill that in as x plus 5, because it would be x minus 5, which would become x plus 5. And then y take away 5 equals to r squared. Now we need to find the radius, okay? Now remember, the radius is half the length of the diameter. So what we can do is find the length between, or the distance between these 2 points. Of course, I've mentioned you could also use these 2 points over here, and that would be the radius directly. But what I'm going to rather do is just use the points that we were given originally, find the distance between them, which is the diameter, and then just divide that by 2. So, to find the distance, we use the distance formula. Okay, and I'm going to use this as point number 2, and this is point number 1. It doesn't matter what you do, to be very honest. You'll get the same answer. But it says minus 6, because that's the x value of point number 2, minus 4, and then the y value of point number 2 is 8, and the y value of point number 1 is 2. Okay, now if we had to go fill this all in, you end up with 2 square root 10. Okay, now we're going to divide that by 2, because that's the diameter, but we want the radius. So the radius would be half of that, which is square root 10. Now, when you put that into this equation, you must square it. So if I put the radius as square root 10, I must square that. And so that's going to become 10. And so the final answer would look like that.